Seeing Josh Heupel go to Pasadena to play Oregon in the second round, awesome. I really want to take time to appreciate what that would leave in its wake, because I don't even know that there is nuance and logic in the conversation at Ohio State at that point. I don't even know if there's room for it. I'm at a place, I don't know where you are on this, I'm at a place where I think you and I have sung from the same hymnal of let's not freak out on Ryan Day one game at a time, but I almost feel like you may get to a point, depending on how that game goes, where if it goes the way you think it is, I don't even know that there's room for it anymore. Like, you just get drowned out. It's like trying to talk to each other on a construction site or on the runway at Hartsfield. You may be making the best point in the world. I can't hear you. I'm not going to be able to hear you. It's never going to get quieter.
I think it almost might be more along the lines of the people who don't want to hear you. Probably could, but just choose to tune you out, and they're not going to have any of it, and they don't really care anyway. I believe we had a similar conversation about Billy Napier earlier this year. I can almost vividly remember you and I discussing this, and your point or question was that it feels like once this ship gets a certain distance away, as far as it's concerned with college football coaches, and can they reel it back in? Is that possible? And it seems impossible. Now, Billy flipped the script to a certain extent and seems to be okay for a minute. But most of these guys it's almost one of those things, you and I have talked about this before with different aspects of college football. When certain portions of a fan base make up their mind, it's made up. You can't go convince them that a quarterback actually made the right read, or didn't you see him get hit and that's why they threw a pick, or there were 2 fumbles and that's why the team had 2 scoop and scores and won. It wasn't like they just beat them up at the line of scrimmage. People make their mind up about things that it's over. And like you stated, I almost feel the same way in that there's a portion of this, if not the majority of it, with Ryan Day that's just already there. We're already at that point. It's not going to make a big difference of what they do or how they do it. So I also think that we should take things a little bit slower with him. We should probably take things a little bit slower with all college coaches.
I think to myself about the Ohio State-Tennessee game. And it's one of those things where 45% of the paths I see include Tennessee winning, 55% of them include Ohio State winning. The one thing I keep coming back to is if I've seen teams and show the ability to limit Tennessee to 0 in the first half multiple times this year, I just think Ohio State has that. I think also, if I'm listening to Chip Kelly talk and he's stating the obvious, stating a couple times this week, yeah, we got to throw the ball a lot more. It may be that they try that and they fail, but I think the personnel at Ohio State, if they commit to that, has to be enough that the team I saw throw for over 300 against Oregon is there. Maybe not to the degree they had success against Oregon when they're playing in 18-degree weather against Pierce and the pass rush that Tennessee has, but I see it going their way. I almost also get to this point, I do this a couple times, 3 times a year maybe, where there's a team in such desperation mode that the alternative to them winning is this world that I can't even comprehend. I'm going to say this again, I cannot comprehend what it would be like up there if they lost this game. That's by 1 point, Cole. If they lose by 13 or 17 points at home after what happened against Michigan, I can't even fathom it. So because of that, I say they got to win it. There's no other option. They got to win it. And so that's why I went with them. Why are you going with Tennessee?
I said earlier, I think Tennessee's a more physical football team. How many 300-yard games do you think Will Howard has this year?
I know of one.
Yeah, you saw it, the one.
Wow.
That's it. So it's really cute for people to just say, oh, Jeremiah Smith and Igbuka and these receivers. Okay, but the passing game hasn't really gotten completely ramped up this entire season. I think another misconception coming off that Michigan game, and I talked about this in the preview that I did today, is that everybody came out of that game. One of the advantages I have is I work on Saturday nights and most Saturday afternoons. I don't see a lot of games. So I read what people say, I listen to what people say, and then Sunday, late morning, early afternoon, I start grinding on the tape. And what I heard about that game was Ohio State tried to play Michigan's game and they couldn't do it, and they failed. And then when I went back and watched it, I said to myself, well, that wasn't really the way that looked. The reason they handed the ball off so much is because they got good run looks, and they still couldn't run the ball. And it wasn't just the defensive line. It was linebacker run-through that was in the backfield causing problems, which means either missed assignments or things you didn't see or was covered up by the defensive line. Things Tennessee can do, things Tennessee can replicate, and actually with an offense that has a pulse that's not on life support, or actually one that hasn't been taken off life support like it felt like Michigan's was going into that game. I think Tennessee has some advantages with the gap scheme runs that they have. I think you'll see them implement more quarterback run and be a little bit more creative with that in this game. And I just think their front four, front seven can stand up. Listen, I think Quinshon Judkins is amazing. I love Travion Henderson. I think G. Scott is going to be critical for Ohio State in this game if they're going to win it in the intermediate passing game and helping out in the run game at tight end. But the offensive line is just not great. Also, keep an eye on this one, Josh. When I went back and watched that Michigan film a couple of times, there are about 4 or 5 snaps that were almost really bad. Now you're going to be dealing with weather, and you're going to be dealing with the same kind of guys in front of you. So if that's a problem, that nothing gets going if that's the case. So I think Tennessee can throttle back on their offensive game plan, hand the ball off to one of the most dynamic running backs in college football, utilize extra tight ends that are physical, that love to get out there and try to block people on their rear ends, and then ask their quarterback to run a little bit, still implement their shot plays down the field. If you hit 2, 3 of them, great. If not, then you play the style game you played at Oklahoma, and you just try to live to survive, run the clock, win by a field goal, whatever it is, and get out of there.
We all who watched the sport all year, Ohio State is down a left tackle and a center. You know that. Like in the back of your mind, you've processed that. But what's funny is the way it works a lot of times perceptionally is you freak out the week that you're missing them. And then if you win the game, the first game you play without them, like if Ohio State goes and beats Penn State without their left tackle, then you don't pay attention to the fact that that guy's still gone the rest of the year. You just recalibrate and, okay, it's just the Ohio State offensive line. Then McLaughlin wins the Remington but goes down at center. And you play against Michigan, and you get caved on the interior. And like you said, there were half a dozen bad snaps. But then you kind of just, all right, well, now we just start speaking in the abstract again about the team. No, those guys are still gone. So you're going to play Tennessee now, which may be one of the most unique preps and challenges that you face all year, and you're still without him, which makes me really nervous picking the side that I've picked in this one. I do feel like, kind of like that Michigan game, if it's a problem, I'll probably know it early on, at which point you got to hope for turnovers, you got to hope for special teams and field position, or you got to hope that your defense can win a game for you, which I think it can here. Anything else on that game? Because I got to ask you about Indiana since you picked them as well.
No, I will say this. I'll say this quickly. If Ohio State can win first downs, number one, you're going to avoid any kind of tempo that Tennessee wants to utilize, and possibly get them in second and third and longs. Ohio State has the edge rushers to get home on third and long. I love Tennessee's tackles. Lance Hurd, John Campbell. They are physical. They get after you. They're not great in pass pro. So Tennessee is going to have to sit back there and throw the ball 36, 42 times to win this game, which I can just imagine the conditions. That's probably just a no anyway. Then that is one area that Jack Sawyer and company and JT could probably find a way to get home. But I think that group's inconsistent as it is. Like they're super athletic. They're twitchy. They're nice. They look good getting off the bus. But very rarely have we seen in the last 2 years the Ohio State edge defenders take over games. The way that we saw Bosa take over games, either one, or the way that we've seen other edge defenders at Ohio State take over games. So that's the problem that I have with it. And if they can't, and I think Ohio State has an advantage through the air against Tennessee's secondary. But are they going to be able to play that style game? Because I don't think their offensive line can hold up. I don't know if the weather's going to be conducive to it. And if they're forced, they haven't done it other than one time this year.
I mean, for those people out there who don't follow this on a day-to-day basis, you're probably talking about between 18 and 20 degrees at kickoff of this game. Just brutal conditions to play in. So much so that I may see the inside of that press box for the first time in a long time Saturday.
It's the wind, though. The wind is what gets you. If the wind gets going like 18, 17 miles an hour, that's going to be a real problem.
I really, really think wind is involved in the SMU-Penn State game, more so than this one. I think you got calm conditions, not as tight a gradient barometrically. I think you're picking up what I'm putting down there.